The People First podcast is a show presented by people with learning disabilities for our friends and community. We talk about issues that are important to us and interview interesting people to find out new information. This is our way to make a difference and have our voices heard.
Hello and welcome to the People First podcast. Today we have a guest in the office called William, and we decided to talk to him on our podcast. Welcome, William, and we hope you enjoy being on the show.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here today.
Why have you visited us today?
Well, I've come here because I'm really interested in making news that people with a learning disability can understand. At the moment in the UK, there isn't very much news that's accessible to people with a learning disability. So I'm kind of researching different ways to make more news that's accessible. So I've come here because you guys are the experts, and I want to see how you make this podcast and how you work together.
Why is it important to make news accessible?
So there's lots of reasons why it's important to make news accessible to everyone. The first is that we live in a democracy, which means that everyone votes to choose the government. People with a learning disability have the right to vote. And it's the job of people who make the news to tell people before elections all about what's happening in the country and what politicians are saying, so that they can make a really good decision about who to vote for. And that's part of the news media's job, is to make their news accessible so that people can make good decisions in elections and make their informed decision in election. So there's a very important democratic reason why we need to make news available for people with a learning disability. There are other reasons too. So one is that people with a learning disability face many challenges in their lives. For example, getting the right healthcare, living in a place where they want to live, getting their equal rights. And if people with a learning disability have access to news about society, that means that they can advocate better for their rights and know their rights better. There are some other reasons as well, actually. There's, at the moment, there's a lot of misinformation, which means information which isn't right. Sometimes, like conspiracy theories happen. So something will happen and then lots of people say the wrong thing on social media. So if the news media doesn't make news for people with a learning disability, they might need to get their news from social media, and it might not be accurate. It might not be right. And so there's another really good reason why we need to do it. And there's another reason, which is sometimes called the curb cut effect, which is that if we make things better for people with a disability, we make it better for everyone. And actually, there are lots of people who struggle to understand the news, not just people with a learning disability. So we also have, for example, people who struggle to read. We have people who don't really speak English that well. We have autistic people, people with dementia, elderly people. And if we make news that's easier to understand, we can help those people too. And the last reason is that I work for the BBC, and the BBC has a royal charter, which is a list of rules about how we have to work, the rules for doing our job. And it says in the charter that we have to serve every community in the UK. So that includes people with a learning disability, I think. It obviously includes people who speak Welsh. It includes people from minority backgrounds. And I think it should include people who need to access more accessible news. So I'm sorry that's a really long answer, but there's lots of reasons. One is the democracy, one is the challenges, one is the misinformation, and another is that it's our job.
Yeah, I agree, because I watch the news and pretty often it takes ages for them just to get to the point, really.
Do you find, out of interest, do people here find on the news that people speak too fast, or is the speed okay?
Well, I think speed's fine. It's just, take the election, for example, it just took ages for them to get to the point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So they're not clear what point they're making.
No.
What about language? Do they use tricky words, or are the words okay? What do people think?
I think it depends.
Speak too fast for me.
Speak too fast for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do other countries already produce accessible news?
Yeah, they do actually. So a lot of European countries make accessible news. For example, Germany, Latvia, Slovenia, Norway, Denmark, Italy. And there are two different types. So one type is normal kind of TV presenters. So the TV presenters or radio presenters that present the regular news. They do another version that's easier and much slower. And then the other type is a bit more like People First, where we have, for example, in Norway, I visited TV Bra, which is a TV news station, and the reporters all have learning disabilities and autism. And that's a different type. So the focus is maybe not so much on accessibility. The focus is more on representation, making sure that topics that matter to people with a learning disability get talked about, interviewing politicians and asking them about learning disability. It's quite different approaches, but lots of countries are doing it.
We heard you have a podcast. What is your podcast about?
So I work for a podcast on the BBC called People Fixing the World. And it's a really fun podcast because it's all about projects that are trying to make things better all around the world. So it might be improving healthcare or improving education. So a lot of the news is quite kind of, I guess, a bit sad or sometimes frightening occasionally. Our podcast isn't sad or frightening. Our podcast is really uplifting and inspiring. And that's why we make it, actually, because people don't just want sad news. They also want good news. And we call it solutions journalism. So it's called People Fixing the World, and it's on the BBC. I'm not the presenter, though. The presenter is called Myra. I'm just a reporter on it.
Why did you start your podcast?
Well, it's like I was just saying. So basically, if you listen to BBC radio, you'll hear a lot of things that are happening all around the world. And we all know that some of the news is just a bit depressing. And so it's good to have a show which looks at news, but in more of a positive way. And I think that's part of it. But also, it's important when somebody has come up with a good idea to fix a problem, to then talk about it and share it so that other people can copy that idea. So actually, my work looking at news for disabled people was inspired by my program I made in Norway, where I went to TV Bra, which is the TV station with people with learning disabilities. That inspired me to then do it here. And I think that's one of the important things about solutions journalism, is that you can inspire projects all around the world if people learn about what's happening.
Do you have anything at the moment that you remember from your podcast?
So, funny moments. Yeah, funny moments. That's a good question. I think the funniest moment was actually, it wasn't on this podcast. It was in my previous work at the BBC. I once had the job of interviewing an actor called Benedict Cumberbatch. He's quite well known. He plays Doctor Strange in the Marvel films, and he played Sherlock on the BBC series. And it was at a charity event in London, and I was going to interview him at a big hall called the Guildhall. It's a very beautiful old medieval hall in East London. The problem was Benedict Cumberbatch and I couldn't find the light switch. And so we went into the hall, and we knew, because from seeing it on TV, that it was a really grand hall. But we couldn't turn the lights on. And we were just walking around in the dark, both of us trying to find the light switch. After 10 minutes, we gave up. And I interviewed him outside. So it was just one of those surreal moments where I was really with a famous actor in the dark. And it just happened that I think it was because it was late in the evening, the staff weren't there to get it ready for us. So there you go. I think that's one of the funniest things that I've had in my career.
What accessible news do you produce already as a journalist?
That's a great question. Not enough. So at the BBC, when you talk about accessibility, people will think about accessibility for blind people, for example, or deaf people, people maybe with physical disabilities who might struggle to access our programs. People don't think at the moment very much about people with learning disabilities or intellectual disabilities. So I want to change that. And at the moment, we do very little for this audience. When I made my program about the reporters with learning disabilities in in Norway, I did do a version. I wrote an article for the BBC News website, and I did a version that was easier to read, a bit like Easy Read. It didn't have so many pictures, and I worked with an expert to make a simple version of that article. And recently, a journalist in Wales did a story, quite a sad story, about learning disabilities in Wales. And she also did an accessible version so that people with learning disabilities could access it. But it doesn't happen enough. And one of the things people with disabilities say is nothing about us without us. But actually, the BBC does a lot, it does a lot about people with learning disabilities that it doesn't then make accessible to them. So, for example, investigations on Panorama or, stories in the news. And we need to think, I think, a little bit more about how we tell those stories to the people that they're about.
What is your favourite part of your job?
Wow. Interesting question. I'm going to have to think about that. Okay, so there are different kinds of journalists, right? You have people who are doing breaking news. That means this on the day that something's happening, they're talking about it. Then you have people who are doing investigations. Yes. And you're finding out, the journalists are finding out about something bad that's happened. Yes. Somebody's done something wrong, and that can take a long time. Then you have, for example, people who are looking at all the data, all the information, and they're providing really interesting analysis. And then you have journalists like me. I'm a features journalist, and I'm interested in telling stories, and I'm interested in meeting people. Right. And that's what I like to do. In my job, I like to meet people just like you guys do and find out more about them. And I'm curious about people's lives. I'm not as interested as some journalists in all the things that are going wrong and, catching the bad people and all that stuff. I'm not that bothered about that. I'm much more interested in meeting interesting people, and I'm really curious about their lives. So I like to go places with my microphone and talk to people and find out what they have that I can learn and that I can tell other people about. That's my favourite part of my job. What's the favourite part of your job?
I love coming here. I love meeting all the people. I like meeting new people. I love everything that we do, not just the podcast. I love everything.
I think what I can tell is that you're a really curious person. And I think curiosity is a really, really important character trait in a journalist.
It is. Thank you for that.
Yeah, I agree.
Is that your favourite part as well, Tom?
Yeah.
Yeah?
And we always love new people to interview.
Yeah.
It really makes us grow and grow and grow.
Yeah. I think people must love coming here to this studio and meeting you guys.
We all love it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also, can I just say something else? That if you are doing an interview, you can actually be quite nosy.
Yes.
You can ask whatever you want, actually. And
Yes,
people
you
have to,
can.
even if people don't ask your question, you have permission to ask those questions. When I travel to other countries to meet people in other countries, I get to do things that most tourists can't do, right? I get to go in people's houses and see how they live and ask them questions. And that's really fun. If you're a nosy person, this is a great job to have. So I would say don't feel bad about being nosy, because often if you really, really want to ask a question, that's the one that your audience wants to ask too. That's the
Yes.
question that they want to hear the answer to. So you have to be brave sometimes and ask those nosy questions.
You do. It's a part of life.
Yeah.
Where could we find more information about accessible news?
So where could we find more about accessible news? I think, okay, so there is somebody in the UK that's doing this, and they're doing a really nice job. There's an organisation called United Response. They are a care organisation. They look after people in their homes and in care homes. And they are, I think they're non-profit making. They produce one news story a week in Easy Read. And I don't know if you've seen it, but it's great. And they're not afraid to tackle really tricky topics. And they have a group of people with a learning disability who translate those stories into Easy Read. I think it's every week. So if you're interested in seeing easy news or accessible news in English, Google Easy Read United Response News, and you'll find what they're doing at the moment. What I think, though, is that although it's brilliant that they're doing that, I think it should be our job to make news accessible, because we have access to lots of editors who can make difficult decisions, and we have access to, for example, news footage and interviews. So it's easier for us to do it, and it's part of our job, like I said, in a democracy. So my view is that broadcasters and people making the news ought to be doing accessible news. But I think what United Response are doing is fantastic.
It's been wonderful to hear all these questions and lovely to see you.
Yeah, no, it's lovely to come here. Thank you for speaking to me. Have you got one more question?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Why did you start your research, and what do you hope happens next?
So I got interested in this topic because my daughter has a learning disability, and my son is autistic. So I have my son is 12. He doesn't have a learning disability, but he's autistic. My daughter is 10, and she has a severe learning disability and is autistic too. So she can't talk, for example. Because she has a learning disability, I got to meet lots of other children with learning disabilities. And it made me think about the other part of my life, which is working as a journalist. And it made me think, well, as journalists, we're not serving this audience well enough at the moment. I don't think I would have thought about it if I didn't have children. To be honest, I don't think I would know people with a learning disability if my own daughter didn't have a learning disability. Do you understand? Yeah. And I think it's... And the problem, if you're looking at, for example, my organisation, the BBC, the problem is a lot of people never meet people with learning disabilities. And so they don't realise that actually there's a big audience here who doesn't understand some of what we're doing. And so I think it's my job as a kind of an ally to represent people with learning disabilities within the organisation and to try and advocate for them. But as a final thought, one thing I want to say is, because you guys are advocates, I think I really want to say to people with learning disabilities that, you have a right to news. You have a right to accurate, impartial information about the world, and you have to demand it. You have to say. So next time you have a politician on here, I want you to say that there should be more accessible news, because unfortunately, I do think that people with a learning disability have been a bit forgotten by people who are making the news. Not just the BBC, but lots of organisations in the UK. So I really think it's time for you to demand that you have news that you can understand.
I agree. And plus the Accessible Information Standard, which was 2015, something like that. Hardly anything of that's come of it, because I've only been given, even as an example, doctor's appointments. You never get them in Easy Read.
That's all the time we have for today. We'd like to thank William for coming into our office today and for speaking to us on the podcast. It's been an absolute honour and a surprise, really. We didn't expect it. Is there anything else you'd like to add before you leave?
No, not really. I just want to say thank you for inviting me on and for showing me how you make this podcast. It's really inspiring, and I hope that there are other organisations up and down the UK who can start their podcasts as well.
Yes, and I hope that they listen, and I hope that they grow as high as we have. Thanks everyone. Thank William.
Yep, thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Remember to comment, like, share on Facebook, Instagram and X. You can find it by searching for the People for Podcast. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.